Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive into the lean startup. Now, you might be thinking, oh no, not another business book. But trust me, this isn't your typical dry business read. It's packed with actionable insights that can completely change how you approach work innovation and even life in general.
Absolutely. The Lean Startup isn't just a book for tech startups. It's a framework for anyone who wants to bring their ideas to life more effectively, regardless of their industry or experience level.
Right. What I love about Eric Ries' approach is how he throws out the old plan everything to death mentality
Huh.
and replaces it with a framework for navigating uncertainty, which, let's be honest, is pretty much the defining characteristic of our modern world.
Exactly. The old way of doing things was like setting sail with a detailed map, but no way to adjust course when you inevitably encounter storms or uncharted waters.
Okay, that's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
So Rees lays out this concept of validated learning. Can you unpack that a bit?
Mhm.
Because it feels like the heart and soul of this whole lean startup thing.
It really is. In a nutshell, validated learning is about constantly testing your assumptions about your customers, your product, and even your business model. It's about getting out of the building and getting real feedback from the people you're trying to serve.
And that feedback loop, that constant iteration, is what helps you steer your ship, so to speak, rather than just blindly following that outdated map.
Precisely. And one of the most compelling examples of validated learning in action that Rees gives is the story of IMVU. Remember them? Those guys with the 3D avatars, they had this initial product that was a total flop. Turns out people didn't want to use their avatars to chat with their existing friends online. They wanted to use them to make new friends. Who knew?
It's funny how often we assume we know what customers want. Reality often throws us a curveball.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's where the minimum viable product, the MVP, comes into play.
You got it. The MVP is all about getting something out there quickly, something functional but basic so you can start learning what works and what doesn't. It's about validating those core assumptions as fast as possible.
Okay, but how does that actually work in practice? Bernice talks about this concept of innovation accounting, which sounds intimidatingly corporate, to be honest.
Don't let the name fool you. It's not about drowning in spreadsheets. Innovation accounting is simply about measuring what actually matters for your startup's growth, not just those vanity metrics that make you feel good, but don't actually tell you if you're making progress. We're talking about things like customer engagement retention and ultimately how much value your product is delivering.
So it's about being data-driven, but in a way that's aligned with your actual goals, not just chasing numbers for the sake of it.
Exactly. And it's crucial for making those tough decisions about whether to persevere with your current strategy or pivot to something new. Because remember, in the world of startups, pivoting isn't failure, it's a sign of intelligent adaptation.
It's like that saying, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product you launched too late, you have to be willing to put yourself out there, learn from those early mistakes, and iterate your way to success.
It's so true. That early stage can be messy, but it's where you learn the most valuable lessons. And sometimes those lessons lead to pivots, even when you think you're on the right track. Rick Ries uses a fascinating example, a company called Vodafone.
Oh yeah, Vodacents. They were trying to revolutionize political activism, right? I'm curious how their story illustrates this whole pivot thing.
Well, they started with one grand vision, a platform to mobilize voters and increase civic engagement. But here's the thing. They went through multiple pivots along the way. Each time they got faster at iterating, quicker at gathering data from their users, and better at letting go of ideas that weren't resonating.
So even with a mission as powerful as theirs, they still had to be open to adjusting their sails. It really shows that being married to your initial idea can be a recipe for disaster in the startup world.
Exactly. And that brings us to another key concept from the lean startup, the idea of sustainable growth engines. Rick Ries argues that there are different ways to fuel your startup's growth, each with its own unique mechanics.
He talks about things like sticky engines, viral engines, and even paid engines, right? It reminds me of those choose-your-own-adventure books I used to read as a kid, except instead of choosing which door to open, you're choosing which growth strategy to pursue.
I love that analogy. And just like in those books, the path you choose will dramatically impact the outcome of your journey. A sticky engine, for example, is all about creating a product or service that people love to use and keep coming back to. Think of something like Slack or Spotify. They're designed to become an integral part of your daily routine.
Whereas a viral engine is all about leveraging the power of word of mouth and social sharing. Think about how quickly products like TikTok or Instagram spread. It's like wildfire. But as Reese points out, each engine requires a different approach, a different set of tactics to really make it hum.
Absolutely. And one of the most surprising examples Rees gives is Intuit. You know the company behind TurboTax.
Wait into it. Those guys are about as far from a scrappy startup as you can get. They've been around forever.
Exactly. And that's what makes their story so compelling. They were this established company with a traditional product development cycle, those multi-year release cycles that were the norm back in the day. But as the market started to change and new, more agile competitors emerged, Intuit realized they needed to adapt or risk becoming obsolete.
So what did they do? Did they just throw out their entire playbook and start from scratch?
Not quite. Instead, they embraced the principles of the lean startup and started experimenting with smaller, more iterative releases. They empowered their teams to test new ideas, quickly gather feedback from customers, and make adjustments based on real-world data.
It's amazing how even these seemingly bureaucratic organizations can embrace the spirit of experimentation and innovation when they need to.
It's a testament to the power of these principles to transform not just individual startups, but entire organizations, no matter how large or established. And one of the key takeaways from Intuit's story is that it's not enough to just adopt the tools and tactics of the lean startup. You have to cultivate a culture of continuous learning and improvement.
A culture where it's safe to experiment, to fail fast, and to learn from those failures. Because in the end, that's how you stay ahead of the curve in today's rapidly evolving world.
Precisely. It's about embracing uncertainty as an opportunity, not a threat. And Ries offers a simple but powerful tool for doing just that, the 5 whys technique.
Ah, yes. The 5 whys. It sounds almost deceptively simple, but I'm guessing there's more to it than meets the eye.
There is. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. You keep asking why until you get to the root cause of a problem rather than just addressing the surface level symptoms.
It reminds me of those detective shows where they follow the clues to find the real culprit.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how often those clues lead to systemic issues, problems with communication processes, or even company culture.
Right. It's not always about like technical glitches or, individual mistakes.
Exactly.
So it's about asking why. Not to assign blame, but to uncover those deeper, often hidden factors that are holding us back.
Absolutely. And that's where the real learning and growth happen. It's about fostering a culture of curiosity where asking why is encouraged, not feared.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the lean startup, what's the one big takeaway you hope our listener walks away with?
That's a good question. I think it's the idea that anyone can be an entrepreneur, not in the traditional sense of starting a business, but in the sense of bringing new ideas to life, whether it's in their work, their personal projects, or even just in their own lives.
That's a really powerful message. It's about reclaiming that sense of agency, that ability to shape the world around us, even in small ways. And the lean startup, with its emphasis on experimentation and validated learning, provides a framework for doing just that. So to our listener out there, we hope this deep dive has sparked some new ideas and inspired you to approach your own work with a bit more curiosity and a willingness to experiment. Remember, the world is full of uncertainty, but that uncertainty is also where the greatest opportunities lie. Happy experimenting.